Hi all, Lisa here from Mindful Tarot. Wanting to follow up on my video question from yesterday about decks that bust us open. And I had in mind thinking about the ways in which um, our encounter with a particular deck um, isn't just about, oh, I really love this art, or this resonates with me, or I can really kind of read this well, or it helps me with my shadow work, or I'm talking about those moments where the deck really pushes into us in such a way that something that wasn't at all visible before, something that we were kind of hunkering down in relation to, just becomes a reality that we now encounter. Those moments where maybe the bottom drops out, or where a sense of there being walls around the heart, where those walls crumble down. And that sense of being busted open, I'm not using particularly good grammar, but that sense of that encounter that really shakes us to the foundations. I mean, that might not be a good thing. That might not be something we want. That might not be something we need right now. But I'm interested in the ways in which that happens and how that might create turning points in our lives, or come at a moment when we really need another way. And right now, I mean, the word that keeps coming up for me is this idea of being tenderized. Like meat is tenderized, that, this toughness, or maybe the ways in which we're shielded from the world, that something batters that down or bursts that apart, so that suddenly light and air and space can get in. That kind of transformation seems, at least in my own heart and life, really important right now as we face a world that is just, filled with a lot of messed up stuff, So, the story I wanted to share, and just a little bit of a story, picks up on my kind of wrap up with the Little Storm Challenge and the Cheimonette Tarot, and has everything to do with the way in which, throughout my work with the Cheimonette, I've been really stalked by this lady, by the Queen of Staves. And I've talked about that before. I mean, and not just the Queen of Staves, the wands, the suit of fire, and will and determination, and that kind of shaping of the world. Not the understanding necessarily of the world, not so much the relationship of the world through the swords and through air and communication and thought, but the shaping of the world through will. That whole universe of meaning is something that it's clear I have to make my way with, make my peace with, and that the Cheimonette Tarot, just would not let up, has not let up on that message. And so I'm listening. And I also have the sense that in listening, my world has to change. Like the last line of this poem by the German poet Rilke about the archaic torso of Apollo. It's a poem about this broken bust of Apollo. I'll put it down below. It's familiar to a lot of people, I think. And the last line is, "You must change your life. You must change your life." Those moments where an encounter with art or music or the tarot, right, with the 78, lets us know we must change our lives. So for me, the Little Storm Challenge began, and my first three cards, I'm just going to remind myself, make sure I'm cards, were the Five of Staves, which is the card more than any other that was going to haunt me throughout the challenge. the Fool. And notice the similarity of posture between these two in this deck. And the Princess of Discs. Sorry, the Queen of Discs. And I don't have her card here. But that was my first, right? So you can see her. So I think of myself, you know, I'm an academic. I think of myself as an intellect. I think that I'm someone who lives in my head. I think of myself, there are all these thoughts I have about myself. You know, I know that I'm emotional and moody and that I have this heart. So like if you asked me, you know, a year ago, what were the suits in the tarot that most spoke to me, I'd be like swords and cups. You know, it's clearly I'm like so emotional and moody and here, you know, and that's what I think about myself. And then I'm also, you know, all in the world of ration and reason. And it's like, nope, you are wands and discs. Sorry, Lisa. You may not think that that's what you are, but that's what you are. But more than that, it's really the relationship between this figure, you know, in the Cheimonette tarot, you know, the Five of Wands, which is a relatively, I mean, potentially very benign card, or, you know, reasonably benign card about strife and competition and, you know, maybe about jockeying for power and position, maybe about playful sense of challenge. You know, lots of ways that we might interpret this card. In this deck, you know, here it is. It's clearly, you know, for the Rider-Waite-Smith imagery, you know, this is about community. I mean, maybe a rivalrous community, a community where there's striving and strife. But, you know, when Eden Gallanter takes it up, this is a card that's about the self and about the way in which the self is harnessing his or her energy in regards to the world and trying to hold everything together. And it's counterposed with the Four of Staves, which is, you know, a card of balance and a certain kind of grace. So, you know, from the start, this my deep relationship with this deck was asking me to consider how I work with my will and with my energy and with the sort of fierceness and determination of this energy. What do I do with that? How do I work with that? Do I work with that in such a way that I liberate a kind of fresh beginning? Or do I work with that in such a way that I create a kind of world of war and domination and striving for status and stature? And, you know, in Eden Gallanter's deck, when, you know, the suit of wands or staves reaches its kind of turning point culmination, the Ten of Wands, the Ten of Staves, you know, it's not just like a kind of, this is from the Paulina Tarot, it's not this kind of bemused, here I am, look at the burdens I've picked up, what can I let down? You know, maybe okay, I've got this stuff on my back, but maybe I can let go of the things in my arms. Maybe I can, you know, sort of take in the innocence and companionship of, you know, those around me, like that little creature. I don't have to suffer or feel overburdened necessarily. That's not what this looks like in the Cheimonette deck. In the Cheimonette deck, this is the Ten of Staves. You know, it's very analogous to imagery that we associate with the Ten of Swords. It's about ego death. You know, this is about the self burning up in the, you know, culmination and the apotheosis of will and determination. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's not a particularly warm and fuzzy thing, and it's not simply about ways that I take up a burden. This Five of Staves, this isn't about burden. This is about a deep and full-bodied expression and engagement with a world that is pointy and sharp, a world that is entangled and complex. So, you know, what I kept getting, the message I kept getting and I'm looking now to remind myself of what my very last spread was. That's right. When I did the challenge. So my very last spread, you know, I had the Queen of Staves and the King of Staves, and I get the Prince of Staves, who's kind of a madman in this deck. I get, once again, the Five of Staves, and I get the Eight of Swords, you know, which is very much a card of constraint in this deck, but a pulling up and out of that tightness. There's a way out. I'm not stuck. The sharpness of the world around me can be precisely the means of my liberation. So how this deck kind of burst me open, well, it's still bursting me open, is it's making me ask, okay, if this is my karma, well, first of all, it's saying, look, this is your karma. This is who you are. You are the Five of Staves. You are the Queen of Staves. And the fierce King of Staves. And the completely mad Prince of Staves. You're the whole damn royal court. Although I never did get the Princess of Staves, so, you know, whatever. I'm 3 out of 4 of the figures of that court. I've never drawn the Princess of Staves in my working with this deck. At least not so I can remember. But that's who I am, okay? The wand energy, that's me, with a potential for a kind of expression in the world of discs. I may not like being that fierce and determined and willful being, but sorry, karma is karma. So now the real question is, again, I am where I begin, or where I began, at least with that challenge. The real question is, how do I take this guy, loosen him up so that he's this guy, and there's a sense of freshness and possibility. The other figure whose poise is position is reminiscent of these cards is the Magician in this deck. Well, actually, in the Hanged Man. They're all sort of the same figure. Legs crooked, arms splayed, body turned. How do I manifest freshness, possibility, openness, transformation from this core of willfulness? This is a big question to me. And this being who inhabits me, she is the being who busts me open. So stay tuned, world. She's coming through, and she may be coming free. We'll see. Okay. Eager for your thoughts. Share your videos. Decks that have busted you open. Let's hear about it.